If you were to Google great horror games to play this Halloween, it's likely that purveyor of omniscience would recommend you the same old titles you probably already played time and time again. Silent Hill 2, Resident Evil, Alien Isolation, Outlast, etc, etc. There's nothing wrong with these games. In fact, if you haven't played them, then we highly recommend you check them out as soon as possible. But as always, we're looking for fresh blood, something new to sink our teeth into. And we thought, what better way to celebrate this, the Spookums season, than to share our findings with you, the viewer. For this list then, we're taking a look at titles released in the last couple of years that will add some brand new frights to your well-established repertoire of horror favourites. Be they AAA or indie titles, brand new IPs, or sequels and spin-offs. I'm definitely not an evil, bloodthirsty robot in a human suit, Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 recent horror games to play this Halloween. Number 10. Little Nightmares 2. Upon its release in 2017, Little Nightmares had everyone who played it experiencing a series of small, bad dreams thanks to the terrifying world it built, and the feelings of helplessness it bestowed upon players through its protagonist, Six. After garnering such universal praise, naturally the only thing to do was to create another, but rather than going down the sequel route, developer Tarsier Studios opted to go for the prequel option instead. Much of Little Nightmares 2 is very similar to its predecessor. The hauntingly beautiful art style has remained, the spooky sound design that will send chills down your spine has carried over, and the puzzling and platform elements of the gameplay have also stayed much the same. This time, however, our protagonist is Mono, a young man who clearly takes his style tips from Shia LaBeouf. Little Nightmares 2 also sees our raincoat-wearing friend Six make a triumphant return, and the two must work together to survive the horrors of Pale City. Ew. Unlike Six, Mono can fight back against smaller foes to a degree, but don't think you'll be able to hack and slash your way through Little Nightmares 2. Stealth is still very much the order of the day, and that paper bag can only protect you from so much. Sweet dreams. Number 9. Song of Horror. If you're a fan of old-school survival horror, the sort with fixed camera angles, tricky puzzles, and gradual exploration, then you might just fall in love with Song of Horror. You know, just as soon as it's done scaring the pants off you. After famed writer Sebastian P. Husher and his entire family go missing, it's up to you, the player, to explore a series of locations and uncover the dark secrets surrounding the mysterious disappearance. You'll need to search for clues, solve puzzles, and avoid a mysterious entity known only as the Presence, lest you become its latest victim. Players can choose from 13 playable characters, each of whom has a different connection to the central story, approaches the situation in a unique way, and has varying degrees of effectiveness against the supernatural forces that seek to dispatch you. Perhaps the most terrifying thing about Song of Horror, though, is the fact that the game adapts to how you play. So rather than relying on set pieces for its scares, it takes note of the decisions you make and then uses them against you to terrifying effect. Add permadeath into the mix, and you've got yourself one heck of a spooky experience. Number 8. Visage. When Silent Hill's demo, PT, landed on consoles back in 2014, gamers rejoiced. Finally, a survival horror game that was not only engaging and well written, but that also had the power to scare us half to death. Then came the whole Konami vs Kojima fracas, Silent Hills was cancelled, and survival horror fans were left to just replay Resident Evil for the 400th time. Not ones to take such a disappointment lying down, however, Sad Square Studio decided to create their own game that was heavily inspired by PT. Visage is a first-person experience in which the player wanders a large house and attempts to find an exit. Throughout Visage, players must solve puzzles and find keys in order to advance and unravel the mystery at the centre of the game, all the while hindered by supernatural entities that manipulate the surroundings. Visage also features sanity mechanics inspired by the likes of Amnesia: The Dark Descent, so if players stay in the dark for too long, protagonist Dwayne will slowly lose his mind and eventually succumb to the ghosts and demons that haunt the house. Whilst it remains a travesty that Silent Hills never saw the light of day, Visage will certainly go a good way to scratching the itch for players who were desperate for more Silent Hill/PT spookums. Number 7. Ciaran. Following a serious mishearing of the title of this entry and some furious googling to clarify the situation, we are very pleased to report this is not a game about an angry middle-aged lady who demands to speak to your manager. Although that sounds just about as spooky, to be honest. Jokes aside, Ciaran is a brilliant 2D side-scroller that flips the idea of horror on its head by making you, the player, the very thing that's wreaking the havoc. Rather than fleeing or fighting a disgusting, amorphous creature, you are the disgusting, amorphous creature. If that's a joke about the weight I put on during lockdown, that is not funny. Held in a containment unit within a scientific research facility, it's your job as a giant, betentacled blob to escape your bonds and kill anyone who gets in your way. Through the use of material analyzers, you'll experience flashbacks that reveal things about your past and help you to piece together just how you came to be captured in the first place. It's basically The Thing from the point of view of the titular thing. And whilst Ciaran is not particularly scary, certainly not in the way that other titles on this list are, it's still got plenty of pixelated viscera and gore to keep even the most hardcore of horror fans happy for the better part of an afternoon. Number 6. Amnesia Rebirth. When the original Amnesia was released back in 2010, it had pretty much everyone who played it wetting themselves in fear. A few years later, the kind people at Frictional Games were good enough to freak us all out again with Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs, and now they're back once again to scare the flipping heck out of us with Amnesia Rebirth. Lovely. Set in 1937, the game follows French archaeologist Tassie, who must wander alone through caves and ancient tombs in the hopes of finding her lost companions. In order to progress, there are a number of puzzles that must be solved, and several notes left by NPCs that delve deeper into the game's story. Like the first game, Rebirth utilizes sanity mechanics, which means players must keep an eye on Tassie's fear levels in order to prevent her from becoming overwhelmed by her own fear. They can do this by managing these scarce light sources, solving various puzzles, and of course, evading the hordes of monsters. Oh, and did we mention that those monsters cannot be fought either, so when the player does come across them, they have two choices: run or hide. Actually, you know what? It's quite nice in this cupboard. I think I'll just stay here for the rest of the game. Okay, see ya. Number 5. The Medium. There are many people out there who believe that the mortal plane on which we live is not the only one in existence, and that there may be spirit worlds out there inhabited by those who are no longer with us. It's this line of thinking from which The Medium gets its premise, only with a whole load of additional scares thrown in for good measure, of course. Players step into the shoes of Marianne, the titular medium, who must use her unique psychic abilities to uncover secrets and solve the mysteries surrounding an abandoned communist resort. The gameplay sees Marianne flitting back and forth between the mortal realm and the spirit world, and she must use her ability to traverse both in order to solve puzzles and survive encounters with a whole bunch of not-so-friendly ghosts. The Medium is a truly cinematic experience, and though there are elements of stealth present, the vast majority of the game consists of solving puzzles and finding items that will allow you to advance. If you're a fan of developer Bloober Team's previous efforts, such as Layers of Fear or Blair Witch, then you are certain to have an enjoyable, if deeply disturbing time playing The Medium. Number 4. The Dark Pictures Anthology. If you've ever watched a horror film and thought to yourself, oh, gee whiz, these characters sure are dumb, you wouldn't catch me making such ridiculous decisions in that situation, then you should try your hand at the Dark Pictures Anthology, a collection of interactive movies that will put its characters' fates squarely in your hands. At the time of recording, the anthology is made up of 2 separate stories, with a third set to be released around Halloween 2021. Perhaps you'll already have given it a go by the time this video goes out. The first game, Man of Medan, follows a group of friends as they embark on a horrifying journey aboard a ghost ship. You can play it alone or with friends in movie night mode, and each of the choices you make ultimately decide whether a character lives or dies. In Little Hope, the anthology's second game, several college students and their professor become trapped in a small town, and it's up to players to save them before evil forces drag each of their souls to hell. Each game lasts just a couple of hours, but we can guarantee you will be on the edge of your seat for each and every spine-chilling yet occasionally hilarious minute. That is, when you're not kicking yourself or your daft friends for killing off yet another character. Number 3. Phasmophobia. If you're in the market for some multiplayer spookums this Halloween season, then look no further than the 2020 indie darling Phasmophobia. Though still early access at time of recording, this fright fest for up to 4 players has taken the world by storm. For the low price of your own sanity, you and up to 3 friends can explore various creepy locations in order to find out what kind of spectre is haunting them. The idea isn't to defeat the ghosts, but instead use all of the tools in your arsenal to figure out what manner of ghoul has taken up residence. Sadly, there are no Caspers to be found, so expect that every one of these phantoms is out to get you. You'll need to use various pieces of equipment like EMF readers, UV torches, and Ouija boards in order to collect evidence before drawing a conclusion as to just what exactly is hunting you. You can communicate with your friends, but be careful what you say, because your pals aren't the only ones listening into your conversations. Oh, and if you really don't care about your stress levels, you can also play it in VR, but, you know, good luck with that. Number 2. Layers of Fear 2. Anyone who's played the first Layers of Fear will know what a strange and terrifying experience it is. If you were to describe it to a friend, it's really just a walking simulator set in a spooky house, and yet it manages to keep the players on edge and feeling unsettled throughout its entire 3-hour runtime. Layers of Fear 2 is more of the same, at least in terms of its gameplay mechanics. The old Victorian house is switched out for a huge ship, and the tortured artist protagonist is now an actor preparing for, quote, the role of a lifetime. Like in its predecessor, you'll slowly make your way through rooms and corridors to uncover puzzles and secrets, find doors locking themselves behind you, and keep discovering that the environment has changed itself while you weren't looking. Or has it? Couldn't you really be sure? The game doesn't rely on violence or gore for its horror, and though there are a hefty number of jump scares, most of the terror you'll feel just comes from the ominous atmosphere that the game creates through expert sound design and haunting visuals. It's definitely a game to play with headphones on and the lights off, but maybe not while you're home alone. Just a suggestion from me. And number 1, Resident Evil Village. Following the series' triumphant return to form with 2017's Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, fans were dying to know what happened to the Winterses after they fled the Baker house. As it turns out, they've been quite busy, having relocated to Europe, undergone a load of therapy and military training, and welcomed little Rose Winters into the world. No sooner have we caught up with the world's unluckiest family, however, than Chris Redfield and his goons bust through the windows, shoot Mia multiple times in the chest, kidnap Ethan and Rose, and destroy a whole load of nice local wine. God, how inconsiderate. After their vehicle is run off the road by unknown forces, the remainder of the game sees Ethan hunting for Rose throughout the eponymous village, and trying to figure out why the heck his wife has just been shot and a bunch of nutcases have kidnapped his baby. There are fewer spooks here than in Resident Evil 7, so don't expect to be frightened out of your wits quite so much. However, Village still brings a tense atmosphere, plenty of imposing enemies, and a whole smorgasbord of puzzles for players to sink their teeth teeth into. Plus, if it does all get a bit too spooky, at least you can hang around in Castle Dimitrescu and try to catch sight of everyone's favourite 9-foot vampire lady. Happy Halloween, everybody.